Well, greetings, and thanks for joining us for another episode of Lightbulb Moments, episode number 154. Can't believe we started out thinking we were going to do this 5 times, Michelle. All right, so this is a live recording of a podcast. It also will be featured on YouTube. So whether you're joining us in person or live or listen to YouTube or podcast, we're thrilled you're with us. I'm Tom Kuhn. I'm host and curator of Lightbulb Moments. I'm also CEO of Qnity. What is a light bulb moment? Well, we call it a sudden realization, enlightenment, or inspiration, and we need light bulb moments to fuel what's next for us. At Qnity, we're here to take you from what's confusing, overwhelming, and complicated to a simpler path towards prosperity, whatever it looks like for you. And remember the 3 currencies we have in life and areas we need a high return on. These currencies are attention, time, and money. And thanks for spending your precious time with us today. We love hearing from you. We did hear from some people last week, which we're gonna share something in a little bit based upon something we heard. Check out past episodes. This week's guest, which we'll get to in a few minutes, is Gaddis, who's an author and entrepreneur, and also very active in the University of Texas, Austin X's. What are the X's? Oh my gosh, we're gonna have to get to that in a little bit. She's also the author of a bold book, Cowgirl Power, How to Kick Ass in Business and Life. And we're going to be talking about some of that as well as a bunch of things with Gay. Our last guest also came from the U Texas community. Actually, our last 3 guests, we had Dr. Katie Pritchett, who had a great session last week. Check out that episode. 2 weeks ago, we had Dr. Elizabeth Richmond Garza, who was also part of the University of Texas and the Human Dimensions part of the university. And then Mike Leggett, who was also part of Human Dimensions. And then he joined us with a regular and past recipient of the Golden Light Bulb, Sam Bricado. These are just a few of the great episodes that we've had recently. Also, love the episode recently by Liz and Jess Arundel from Luscious & Co. Check that out. But don't be afraid to submit a light bulb moment of your own, whether it's in the chat or email or whatever. The podcast of Lightbulb Moments is sponsored by Lightheart Sanders, the CPA firm, Green Circle Salons, and Forest. So thanks to them. They're all great partners in several things we do together, and we want to give them a shout out. Upcoming dates. Later today, this will be recorded, we have part 2 of the Succession series. It's coming up in 2 hours, and that will be on the subject of valuations, a topic I love. And also, I'm going to be featuring some new stuff that's hot off the press, new insights, etc. So that's a Succession series. We started this series just because of a series of events that just reminded us of people that were in a situation where they were closing their business, they had closed their business, and we feel that that whole trajectory could change with some education and knowledge. So that's why we're doing this series. So that's coming up a little bit later today. That is the second of a series of 3. So we're doing it today. This is a typo if you're viewing the screen. Valuations is today, May 15th, not May 22nd. Then on the 29th, we're going to have a special session on readiness. So that series is ongoing. There's a QR code if those of you are viewing this that will allow you still to register. Otherwise, they'll put it in the chat. Of course, we have the Phil conference. I can't believe this is the last episode of Lightbulb Moments before the Phil, which is coming up this weekend. Our theme this year is Leap, and we certainly are going to be sharing a lot of Leap type themes and activities and exercises. It's going to be full of a lot of great things. And this year is a big leap for us as we have this significant collaboration with the University of Texas, Austin, which has so many dimensions to it. And I'm thrilled to have Gay with us today because she's a core part of that community. Reminder also, on Sunday night is a celebration of Lightbulb Moments, which is our annual acknowledgement and recognition of all my guests over last year, actually in history. And we also have some special awards that we're going to be providing. There is a dress code for Sunday night. It is a black and white night. We're looking for simple elegance. This is not formal wear. Feel free to dress creative. Black and white only, please. And we also are going to ask people to shift their cameras into black and white mode. How super fun and exciting to have an evening of just black and white photography. So anyway, that is coming up. If you've registered for the film, make sure that you also register for this. It's going to be a fun night. Dress code, elegance, embrace the elegance of simplicity. And I think I've covered what I need to. Don't forget to check out Erin's episodes on Money O2. She just interviews some of the most amazing people. So that's her podcast. I also want to mention on the calendar, this has a level of urgency to it. Linnell Lynch is very, very much want to get information out there that's very timely. I'll share with you in a minute, but for those of you in the school community or not in the school community, this is some very important legislation coming up. And so on the 17th, May 17th, between 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time, she'll take you through everything you need to know about the elimination of the 150% rule. And I'm just going to cover that very briefly. The presenters will be Linnell, CEO of Bellis Academy. There'll also be for Farnaz Thompson, partner at McGuire Woods, as well as Jed Brinton, Senior VP and General Counsel at CQ. And this is really a program length rule that requires programs to be no longer than 100% of the state minimum number of hours required for the occupation. Many people are impacted by this. There is some strategic discussions of a legal solution on this. So I'll make sure that members of our team put this in the chat so you can join this. And I just wanted to make sure I got that out. All right, so that is May 17th, 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You do need to register. My Lightbulb moment last week was we had the opportunity to go through our Impact Award winners. And we also acknowledged several of the amazing brands that are sponsoring not necessarily the fill, but Sunday night Lightbulb Moments. That includes Aveda, Paul Mitchell, Green Circle, Wella, Forest, Ultraceuticals, Zenoti, and Lightheart Sanders. Reminder also, we're going to have, we haven't announced these yet. These are past recipients, Megan Jasper and Sam Bricata. But Sunday night, we're going to be awarding 2 golden light bulbs. Lightbulb moment this week is in prepping for today's session on valuations. I had several light bulb moments. And I think in the interest of time, I'm going to save those so we can get to Gay sooner rather than later here. But definitely light bulb moments as it relates to salon and small business valuations, especially micro businesses that are under $5 million. So a lot of light bulb moments on that. But what I'd rather do is get to Gay. I already mentioned that she's author of Cowgirl Power. I have listened to not all of, but enough of the book to get the spirit of the book. And I highly recommend it, whether you're female or male. And a little bit about Gay. She founded T3, which is the think tank. I love that, by the way. I love T3. I wanted to use T3 at one time, Gay. We'll get to that later. It was an innovative digital advertising agency that grew into the largest female-owned agency in the United States under leadership of 30 plus years. She sold the business to a private equity firm 2019, right before the pandemic. Not bad timing there, Gay. Today, Gaddis is focused on her energy on empowering the next generation of business leaders. She's an active speaker on women's leadership, company culture, entrepreneurship, and she has characteristics that she really has defined that goes into cowgirl and success and all of that. So, Gay, let's bring you to off mute here. And how are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm out in the hill country of Texas, and it's a beautiful day. We've had rain. It looks like the English countryside.
You know, I would have had no idea what you were talking about in terms of the Texas Hill Country until probably 6 weeks ago when we took a drive out there. It's Fredericksburg, right?
No, we are near Marble Falls, Texas, but kind of in that
Fredericksburg
area.
is in the Hill Country, right?
Oh, yes, yes.
Okay. And is that where you live then?
Part of the time, I live in Austin, part of the time because I have so much I do in Austin, but any moment I can, I come out to the ranch to work, and it's a real working ranch. So it takes a lot of energy and time and planning.
Well, one of last year's Golden Light Bulb recipients, Tracy Herring, who she might be joining us today, I haven't checked here. She's just down the street from you. And at some point, the two of you should have lunch because you'll love each other because she reminds me of you. She's a bold, smart, ambitious, inspiring lady. So I hope you get to meet another hill country person. So
Be glad to.
well, I feel like there's a lot to talk about with you. And I really, when someone publishes, as you have, you published a book here, we have the opportunity to get a glimpse of a person. And I think your story that you share towards the beginning of the book is really incredible here in terms of your growing up and quite a bit of diversity on both sides, both parents.
Mhm.
And so let's kind of start with, I don't want to spend too much time deep in the past, but let's start with Liberty, Texas.
Well, it's a very small town, 45 miles northeast of Houston. Most people have heard of Houston, Texas, but our little town was nestled in the piney woods. I grew up as a country girl in many ways, but the nice thing was because we were so close to Houston, it gave us the opportunity to go in for opera or to great opportunities for shopping, doctors, some of the things that you may not typically find in a small town. So I kind of had the best of both worlds there, but it was a great little community to grow up in, kind of big fish in a small pond scenario. But I had a lot of chances to spread my wings and do a lot of things and perform and act in local plays. And I was a young artist and did really well in high school, student leadership, all those things. But it was a small town, less than 10,000 people. So
Mhm.
everybody knew what everyone was doing, and there was nowhere to hide.
You do, you talk about your parents and how really they fueled so many different characteristics. Do you mind spending a minute talking about that?
Yeah, they were really interesting people. My parents were of the era that they grew up as children in the Depression. My dad was in World War II as a young man. He joined the Navy before he was legally able to, but that's what the young men did back then, and had a really rough time in the Philippines. My mom had a pretty bizarre thing happen to her when she was 12. She was diagnosed with bone cancer in her right arm, and they had to amputate her arm because in those days there was not much else to do, and there was no chemo, there was no radiation. They just amputated and said good luck. When you're right-handed to begin with and you're in junior high, that is a pretty tough thing to overcome, and her story is pretty remarkable of how she did overcome that and became just a real leader in the community. She was an outstanding educator, just a real inspiration to me. But what I do talk about in the book is that she was a disaster with numbers. And you talk about valuations and keeping books and all those things. She owned a kindergarten. She was not good with that. And so after my father passed away when I was 13, he had a very sudden death. And it was a big blow. I was an only child, and my mother and I were just kind of on our own. He was an entrepreneur also. He had started his own engineering firm, but unfortunately, it was young and he had not had a time to really amass much wealth in his company. He did take property in return for sometimes his services. So we did have some land that my mom ended up selling, and I didn't realize how much she had sold and almost ran through that. So I ended up taking care of her from a financial standpoint pretty early on. And
Mhm.
all the things that she did well, and as much as she supported me, that was her blind spot. And so I helped her out with that. But, it was kind of tough. I mean, I was 13. I got my first job when I was 13 years old. I was an engraver at a jewelry
Mhm.
store. And that's a pretty responsible job for a kid. people probably don't even know what I'm talking about anymore, but that people would buy these big silver trays and goblets and all these things, and they would give them as gifts and say, for your 30 years of service to the Liberty Independent School District, we present you this, blah, blah. And I have to engrave all that on this tray. And if I messed up, they told me I'd have to pay for it. And so you talk about responsibility at a young age, but I loved it. And, eventually put my way through college, and then we can go on and on from there. But people in Liberty, though, supported us. And it was a very forgiving place in a lot of ways, as far as embracing my mother and me and giving us just a real kind of a safe place with a lot of love.
So you talked about your journey to college and at times felt like the outlier and whatever, but certainly those are formative years for you. And one of the things that I so relate with your career, kind of jumping ahead into not necessarily current, but really into a very successful career, is you lived in the world of creativity at agency. And we had a fun conversation about that a little bit. And I'm always fascinated by people that live sort of on the business and the creative side. So you ran a major advertising agency, and we talked about that a little bit in terms of the salon and spa industry and the type of
Yes.
people it attracts. So, leading a team of creatives, what was that like?
Well, fortunately, my undergraduate degree is in fine arts. So I studied to be a creative artist, and it gave me a different understanding, I think, of the people that I hired who were creative types. And when I say creative types, they were art directors, designers, copywriters, innovative thinkers, strategic strategists around, really coming up with the next creative idea, because our clients hired us because we were thinking in different ways than they could. That's why they hired us, because they were looking for our creativity, our innovation. But the way that you manage and hire people who are creatives is a little different than some other personality types. They really need some wide open spaces. They need opportunities to spread out and think and be able to not be criticized if they come up with kind of a bizarre idea at the time that turns out to be the next big thing. So I really understand that. And I wouldn't say I ever coddled anyone, but I understood them. And when they would come to me with a new idea, instead of saying, well, that doesn't make sense because, we're doing this, this, and this, or financially we can't do that, I would give them a lot of opportunity to fail sometimes, because I would say, okay, fail 3 times, but I bet you come up with the next big idea the next time. And so I would sell their work really well because I understood it. And I coached them on how to relate to clients. Because sometimes when you're a creative type, you already kind of have this vision and this idea of where things are going. And don't assume that your client or your customer understands where you're going. So you have to kind of walk them through it, bring them along. And I would even say in the salon business, many times people who are working in that environment are real creators. They come up with beautiful ways to do things, or a new way to provide a service, or some way to give your customers this unique experience that makes your salon the place people want to come back to. And so, but again, it's kind of how do you bring them along, because they also have to play in the sandbox together. And, sometimes they don't see eye to eye, but that's okay. We would provide an opportunity to have trust and respect for people as they would come forward with their new ideas or their ways of solving a problem. And so it was really kind of a fun environment for me. I absolutely loved it. I loved the innovation and creative thinking.
So what was when at the peak of the head count, what was the number of people on the team?
We were just at one point close to 270. I think it was around 268.
Yeah, wow, yeah.
Yeah.
And when you're in your bio, it says largest digital agency, female-owned digital agency. Um, that would be when you define that landscape, kind of define that landscape with digital agency.
When I started the company in 1989, of course, we were not a digital agency. We were doing traditional advertising, which is what everybody remembers back then. It was TV, outdoor boards, radio, print ads, brochures, things like that, developing logos. So we were based and always into understanding what a brand was. And so people forget sometimes that always protecting the brand and being true to the brand, no matter what the medium is so important. And that's important in every business. You don't want to lose your way. If you're really known for something or that's your look and feel and your brand, don't mislead your customers or clients because they want to understand. That's why they buy you. That's why they want to go every day in to see you. So we shifted into the medium, which became internet, which became digital, which became all things mobile, which became social, because that's where the clients' customers were going. And so if you follow your customers, where are they going? What are their needs? How are they getting their information? What are they looking for? And you go right there and you provide those services that are going to best meet their needs. And so that's how we kind of got drawn into it because it was a new, fascinating medium. All things internet, like I said, building websites, understanding coding. It was just a new world, a brave new world. But we embraced it because, again, that's where our clients' customers were going. And if we weren't there, we were going to lose business for them and and not delight their customers, which is what it's really all about. It's not what we wanted to do. It's not what necessarily what the clients wanted to do. Where are the customers going? How do you delight the customer?
I'm intrigued to ask you, you exited the business and you heard a little bit earlier that, I spend time helping people with succession guidance,
Yeah.
why'd you exit?
Well, I didn't build a company to sell it. And all entrepreneurs, though, need
Wait,
to
you
face.
did, excuse me, you
I
did?
did not build it to sell.
Thank you.
So when you don't have this, a lot of companies, as you know, start to sell. That's the end game. That's their goal from the beginning. And whether it's going to be a 5, 10, 15 exit, whatever those years are. I've seen many startups in Austin. That was the purpose from the beginning. We're going to sell at this point or right around that point. So we're going to make decisions and do things to prepare us to sell. I didn't build the company to sell it. I honestly thought it might stay in my family for a couple generations. And it almost worked that way. But at one point, our oldest son, who was working in the business with me, came to the family. We had a family meeting, which I encourage everyone to do if your family's involved in your business, which they are, because whether you like it or not, they're stakeholders, or they may be sincerely stakeholders. And we had to have these meetings. And so he came to us one time and said, you know what? I can't do this the rest of my life. I'm not in. And so, okay, well, let's all adjust. Let's figure this out. And so we decided then that we would put the company out there. We hired a really great broker and great bank and consultants in New York to help us decide how to value the company and also to put it out there to see what interest was there. And so we did that. And from the very beginning, though, Tom, I said, if I don't like the deal, I'm not going to do it. Because the good thing is we were not desperate to sell. We didn't have to sell then. And so that's a good feeling. It's always good if you're going to sell your business that you're not desperate, because then you'll put up with a whole lot. You'll take a lower price. I mean, it's just not the great position to be in. So when we got to that point, I liked the deal. I said, down to the last day, I can cancel this, but we went through with it. And like you said, it was just kind of my guardian angel or something sitting on my shoulder, because it was the end of 2019. And who would have known in March of 2020 that the whole world would turn upside down with the pandemic?
Incredible timing for you.
It was.
Incredible. Yeah.
Yeah.
That valuation a year or two later, I mean,
Oh,
wow.
no.
Yeah.
No, it would have been half, maybe. I mean, everything, and especially as a lot of your listeners may understand, is when there are downturns in the economy, when there's an upset in global performance and markets, one of the first things to go is the marketing budget in any client roster. And so, for no fault of your own, and that happened to me through the years during recessions and downturns, we'd get cut, our budgets would get cut right off the bat. And they'd even fire a lot of their staff because that's where you go to cut money in companies a lot of times. And we always would say, gosh, it's going to cost you twice as much to get it back because you're going to lose your position. But that's what happens. And so anytime you're in a downturn of any kind, valuation, income goes down to marketing folks.
So you take this hard work, this ethic, these characteristics that you've likened to cowgirl, which grit would be just one of the grit, determination, all of that, and had very humble beginnings, and you grew this thing and sold it, almost perfect timing. And what a cool career that you've had. Would you ever, looking back, I mean, what would be some of your proudest chapters during that era where you had T3?
We had so many. I think every day was exciting because, again, I could walk in the door and just be with people who were congenial. We hired great people. That was the biggest thing we did. And, the biggest mistakes I ever made was letting a few people in that were not compatible. But we had a lot of respect and love and trust for each other. Every day was an opportunity to create something new. And that's fun. That's fun for me because I get bored pretty easily. And I would be delighted if I'd walk down the hall and see a team working on something I'd never seen before. We did things, we were so first to market so many times, Tom, and it was like a crapshoot if it was going to work or not. I can remember, this is long ago, but this was fun. So we went to Microsoft and MSM was our client. And this is when people were buying ads on the internet. We don't do that so much anymore. It's different now. But there were things called skyscrapers. There were ads on the side, and there were the headers at the top. And so most people or most agencies would buy either top or side scrape. And so we created a technology that no one had done before that allowed the skyscraper to talk to the header. So they were talking to each other when in the ad, and it made just such a dynamic, cool thing. No one knew it could happen. No one could even know it would work. We were one of the first people to use mobile, a bit AI early. Let's say that 7-Eleven was our client, and you'd be driving by, and it was under 40 degrees, and we'd offer them a free cup of hot coffee because it was a cold day. I mean, those are the kinds of things that sounded a little creepy, but it actually was first to market. We created some of the very first websites, and we worked with Michael Dell. And Dell was very, very innovative in how they wanted to sell online. And so that pushed us into like 3D modeling and tours, and it's just on and on. It was just so exciting to see how we could make a difference. And we measured everything. And I will always say that. And that's one of the things I really learned from Michael Dell and his team. Their mantra was, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So everything we did was measured. And we would look at that against client satisfaction. Did the cash register ring? Were we making a difference? Were we making their sales goals? And so those were the things that really hit. And that's how you stay employed with a client, is that you've got to make sure that they're meeting their goals and that they actually have the sales that they project.
I'm curious, during you're an entrepreneur, and the life of an entrepreneur is not always easy. There's ups and downs. There's times where you just wonder, can you make it another day?
Yes.
And, I mean, I think for me personally, there's certain bodies of work or things that carried me through the years. For example, the strategic coach and Dan Sullivan. There's systems like EOS. Is there anything that you're sort of a devotee of, where you really, or you just had a series of mentors, or was there a certain body of work that really led you through a good chunk of your successful years with the agency?
I had a great mentor who really wasn't a mentor, but it turned out to be when I was very young. And I won't go into the whole story of that, but he was quite a bit older. I was working at Baylor Medical Center in Dallas, and I was charged at a very young age to be the public relations director. And I was really too young for the job, but I would go to him and he would just give me a shot of confidence, and off I'd go and do it. And so much of life is really having that person who believes in you and gives you confidence wherever you get that. My husband did that for me through the years. He would be the one, but he was tougher on me than anybody. He'd say, go get him, go you do that, just get out there and make it work. And you got to have people kind of pushing you a little bit, when it's tough, because like you said, so many days are so hard. And you think, gosh, can I get up and do this again? When you lose accounts, or when you lose money, or when you have just bad things happen, and they do. I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, life has got its good and bad. But the other thing that's always grounded me, and I've been fortunate my entire life. I told you I grew up in a small town in the country. My godfather was a rice farmer. I spent a lot of time out in the country with him. When I say out in the country, just out, on the farm. And having my ranch here, we've always had some place to go. And that's where I get my strength. If I'm not able to just look out over the hill country, take a hike, through the canyons, I'm not myself. That's where I kind of hear the voices that say, you can do it, keep going. And it just kind of brings my spirit into a place that allows me to go back and hit it hard again. Quiet.
There's just something about the outdoors. We have, I'm based in Minnesota, Gay, as I've shared with you, and we have within, half a mile a park called Minnewaska. And you're able to get out in the woods, and instantly it's like another world. That really fuels me a great degree too, is that element of nature and getting away, and you can think clearly, can't you? And things can incubate. And
well, what's interesting, and my mother-in-law always said that, because I grew up on a ranch in South Texas, and she'd always say, there's always something new in the country. And we would go out in the ranch and go the same trails, the same roads. And I do that here at ours. And you'll notice a tree that changed a little bit, or a little animal that crawls by, or, the sky's a little different that day. And every day, even though it's maybe the same, is all different, because nature provides us with a beautiful landscape and patchwork quilt of beauty.
I love that. That's, yeah, I mean, that really fills up the tank, doesn't it? Yeah. So, all right, you decided to write a book,
Yes.
and I assume the book happened. I remember, I don't remember the date, but it's relatively recent, last few years. Was it hard to write and publish the book?
Yes, in many ways. But fortunately, I started part of my career as a copywriter in the advertising agency, as well as an art director. So I could draw and I could write. And along the way, Forbes invited me to write articles in their entrepreneur section of their magazine. And so I started writing these articles to entrepreneurs, things I thought that would help them, or just interviewing people that I thought had interesting perspectives or careers. And so, kind of along the way, though, I realized that I had learned so much from living on a ranch, and I had this ranch wisdom. So I started writing these articles. One of them was the effective rules of risk management as a rattlesnake would say, things like that. And my editor said, where are you going with this? What's all this ranch stuff? I said, just hang in there with me. And the articles became very popular. And so I wrote a lot about, negotiations that I learned on the ranch through nature and a lot of those things. And so this was going to turn into possibly a book, where it was going to be a series of advice based on ranch wisdom. And then I kind of halted and said, no, too many people have told me I need to tell my story, my life story, because it really does show the grit, determination, the ups and downs, and everything that it took to run a business and start one from the ground up. And then I got excited about all the cowgirls I'd studied, because they're historic cowgirls that are amazing. And I went and looked them all up at the Cowgirl Museum in Fort Worth, and became fascinated with their lives, because they competed and did amazing stunts and rodeo tricks and all these things, and competed against men back in the 1800s.
Amongst the first professional athletes, is that correct?
Yes, they were. And they were also the first female international superstars, because they traveled around the world and performed before kings and queens. I mean, they had amazing lives, and you talk about tough back then, but they were fascinating. So I didn't want to write a whole book about them, but I thought just little snippets of them through the book would give us all courage that, gosh, if they could do it back then, surely we can do something now just as amazing. So they're in the book. My life stories in the book, and then just my advice and wisdom of the ages. You live long enough and you've been through enough and seen enough running a company that you do have some advice. So it's hard to publish a book. I did have a real publisher. It's not, I'm going to say real, it was not self-published. Hachette published my book in New York. And then getting it out and doing the book tours and all those things. We did an international book tour, but it went over well. And the reason, Tom, is a lot of the advice in it's evergreen. And yes, it's a few years old, but I can still turn to the toolkit or pieces of the book and say, well, that's just as true today as it was 5 years ago. So it's hung in there, and I'm thinking of writing another one that's kind of a sequel to it, but I haven't gotten quite to that yet. But it's a big project to do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's tough, but it's worth it.
Well, let's segue over to is in our final probably 5 minutes or so here. Let's segue over to the University of Texas, Austin, and a couple things here. So congratulations, because I know you were inducted into the Macomb School of Business Hall of Fame. Macomb School of Business, key partner for us at the upcoming Phil, one of the top 20 programs in the world. But you're very involved, and you run the Texas X's. What the heck does that mean?
Some people tell me when they say Texas Exes, they say, is that your ex-husband or wife? No. It's the Ex Students Association. And we have 571,000 in the database that are true Texas Exes. It's a huge thing. And one of my friends told me, Gay, it's like being the mayor of a mid-sized city to do that. But it's been very rewarding. Actually, I got to speak at commencement Saturday, and there were about 55,000 people there. So I've done a lot of speaking engagements, but speaking in front of 55,000 in the football stadium was quite a experience, but it was fabulous. So I do run that, and we have many arms to Texas Exes. It's like a business. There's a lot of, we have a travel industry, and we have business, and lots of things that go on at Texas Exes. And then I do teach at Macombs in executive ed, which you work with, a women's program that's called Women Who Mean Business. And this program is targeted to women with 10 plus years of experience already out there in the business. And we bring in outstanding speakers and teach in the classroom every other month. These women, 40 in a cohort, and we've had tremendous success in helping them grow their careers, grow their businesses. So it's part entrepreneur, part corporate women. They're in this program, and I've just been delighted how successful that has been. And then I do some other teaching at UT. I am involved in, fundraising for scholarships and just a lot of other things. But it's been good, to go back to that place, because I always loved UT. I always was, devoted. But when you're running a business like I did for 31 years, your time is almost full throttle into the business and other volunteer work you do. So it's been nice that after I sold my business to go back to UT more and donate my time and energy there.
Well, you and I get to kick off together at the Phil. You will be the very first person that's part of just an incredible ensemble of talent from one community, the University of Texas Austin community. And we have so many different tentacles to this relationship, including Macombs, Human Dimensions, IC Squared, Bureau of Business. It's just incredible of the different layers. So you are probably the perfect person to kick off the event with me. I'm up there for just a minute just to talk about the relationship with U Texas. But I love that we really have someone who describes themselves as an ambassador of the university being our first speaker at the Phil. So super thrilled. So we don't have 55,000 people coming, but we have an amazing group of people that are going to fall in love with you, and you're going to fall in love with them too.
No, and I'm very excited to be a part of your program, and I really appreciate being included. And yes, it's so exciting you're part of UT community because, as you know, President Jay Hartzell is really devoted to making UT a top research facility and organization and institution in the world. And so I know that you do a lot of research in your industry, and being partnered with UT is a really great thing because that's, I love research, I love numbers, I like results. And I know you do too, Tom. And so that's a great way to partner with the university in that way as well.
Well, you're a dynamo. You're awesome. We're gonna have a great time together. I mean, let's everybody give Gay a virtual round of applause
Thank
and
you.
give her a little shout out in the chat there. And Gay, I feel like I could talk to you the rest of the day here. But what I do know is that you will get the $1 million light bulb. This should be coming to you soon. So you're officially inducted into the Lightbulb Moments Brain Trust. It does earn you a special invitation if you and your husband can join us, or you could do a solo Sunday night. If not, we'll see you Monday morning. But I want to give you a big shout out. Thank you for taking the time with us today.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate your support and all your great questions.
Yeah, and a great book, everybody. Pick it up, and I think you'll get. I do love your story in there. I mean, I think it was super compelling. You draw people in at the very beginning, so shout out to you for your story, sharing it, and we're gonna have a great time with you. So thanks again, Gay.
Thank you, Tom. Hope you have a great conference, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
All right. All right, everybody else, thank you so much. That wraps up another episode of Lightbulb Moments. I had a lot of light bulb moments. I don't know if you did, but no doubt that there's a lot of wisdom, a lot of experience, and a lot of just great character from Gay. And I'm grateful for all of you to join us today, or whether you're listening live, podcast, or YouTube. Have a great rest of the week. Several of you, I'll say see you at the Phil. The rest of you, we're going to be taking next week off, so we'll be 2 weeks out. Thanks for joining us again. All the best.